In this video, we are going to be learning about percentages. So let's say I have this example problem here that says 25 is 50% of what number? 25 is 50% of what number? So I'm sure many of you could probably just sort of intuitively look at this specific problem and realize that, well, 25 is 50% of what number? So that means if I have 100% of it, I just need to double 25. I just need to double 25. Which would mean that it is 50. And yes, that would absolutely work in this particular case, but there's going to be other times where we don't have as easy of nice numbers to work with, like 44 is 80% of what number? So what we need to do then is we need to use math in order to solve this problem, well, mathematically. So how can we solve this actually using math? Well, there's a couple different ways we can do this. The first way is to make equivalent fractions and then use cross multiplication in order to find the missing number. And I'll explain what that means in a minute. And then the other way is to just use division. And I'm going to show that way first here. So using division, another way of thinking of this or rewriting this is by saying 25% or 25 is 50% of what number? Well, all we're going to do then is just say 25 divided by 50%. All right, 25 divided by 50%. And we can rewrite 50% as a actual fraction. What is 50% as a fraction? Well, 50% is just converting any percentage to a fraction is just taking off that percentage sign and putting that number over 100. So that's going to be 50 over 100. And then when we can reduce this here, we can simplify this rather, and realize that 50 goes into both of them evenly. So we will divide both the numerator and the denominator by 50, and 50 divided by 50, that's going to give us 1 on top, and then 100 divided by 50, that's going to give us 2, which again, we could probably, I'm sure most of you just sort of realize that 50% is just 1/2 or 1 over 2. So now we're going to say 25 divided by 1/2. We are saying 25 divided by 1/2. And then if you know how to divide fractions, if not, no worries, we're going to go over it really quick here. And then I also have a whole other video on how to divide fractions, but it's actually really simple. Dividing fractions is the same as multiplying by the reciprocal. So instead of saying 25 divided by 1/2, we could really just rewrite this as 25, which is the same as saying 25 over 1, times the reciprocal of 1/2, which the reciprocal is when you flip the numerator and the denominator. So the denominator is going to go in the numerator spot, and the numerator is going to go in the denominator spot. So instead of saying 1/2, we are going to say 2 over 1. Sorry, I wrote 2 there. I meant 2 over 1. My apologies. And then just like now it's just a multiplying fractions problem. So we are going to multiply the numerators and then multiply the denominators. So 25 times 2 is 50. And then 1 times 1 is 1, and then any number over 1 is just that number itself. So our answer here is 50. So 25 is 50% of 50. And again, we could have just easily sort of looked at that one and intuitively figured it out, but here was one method of using math to actually solve for that. So that's one method where we can convert it to a fraction, or sorry, where we could divide it by the fraction representation of the percentage. Another way is to actually convert them into fractions and then use cross multiplication. So again, what we were saying here is 25 is 50% of a number. So if 25 is 50% of a number, then we're looking for that number, which will be 100%. All right, so we're going to say 25 over 50 is the same as x over 100. And now we have two equivalent fractions here, and we're trying to find the missing number, so we can use cross multiplication in order to achieve this. We're going to take this denominator and multiply it by this numerator, and that's going to give us 50x equals this denominator times this numerator, which 100 times 25 will be 2,500 or 2,500. And now all we need to do is just solve for x. So we can divide by 50 on both sides, divide by 50. The 50s will cancel out right there. The zeros will cancel out right there. So now it's 250. As you can see here, 250 divided by 5. Well, let's say it was just 25 divided by 5. Well, 25 divided by 5 is 5, which means 250 divided by 5, all we're doing is just adding on a 0 there, will be 50. So x equals 50. And we can see two different ways, and we still derived at 50 for the final answer there. So that was like I said, two different ways of being able to calculate percentages of different numbers. All right, so let's look at another example here. Let's do that example again with some different numbers. Now we're trying to say 44 is 80% of what number? All right, again, we can do it in one of two ways here. Let's do it the converting them both to equivalent fractions way first here. So we are going to say 44 is 80% of some number, which is the 100%. So again, we are going to cross multiply here and say 80x equals 100 times 44. That's going to be 4,400. All right, now we need to solve for x. So divide by 80 on both sides. Divide by 80. Well, the 80s will cross out there. We can cancel out 0 there, and now it is going to be x equals 440 divided by 8. All right, so now we need to calculate what 440 divided by 8 is. I can't do that in my head, and we probably can't use a calculator on this test, so we need to use some long division here in order to figure this out. And long division, if you don't remember, it's where we have this bracket here, and we're going to take the numerator and put it on the inside of this bracket. So we're going to say 440 on the inside, and the denominator goes on the outside. So we're going to say 8. And now we ask ourselves, how many times can 8 go into 4? Well, that's going to be 0. And now we move on to the next number. How many times can 8 go into 44? Well, that will be 5, because 5 times 8 equals 40. And then we subtract there. 44 minus 40 is going to give us 4. We ask ourselves again, can 8 go into 4? No, it cannot. So we need to drop down that 0. And now we have 40. Can 8 go into 40? Yes, it can. That is 5. And again, 8 times 5 still equals 40. So again, we're going to do that subtraction there, and that comes out to 0, which means that we have no remainder. That is our final answer. So it comes out to 55 there, which means x equals 55. So x equals 55, and x was the missing number that we were trying to find. So 44 is 80% of 55. And that was using the equivalent fractions method. So now let's try it using the other method. And again, the other method is where we divide by the fraction representation of this percentage here. So what we are going to say again is we're just going to say 44 is 80% of what number? That's the same thing as saying 44 divided by 80%. All right, and then we're going to convert 80% into a fraction. So any number again, converted into a fraction is just that number over 100. All right, we should be able to cross out the zeros here, and now it's 8 over 10, and now divide both sides by 2, and that's going to be 4 over 5. So 80% is the same as 4/5. All right, so I'm going to rewrite this now as by saying 44 divided by 4/5, and now I can convert this into a multiplication problem by saying 44 over 1 times 5 over 4. All right, and now that's going to be, again, we're going to multiply the numerators and multiply the denominators. If I do the denominators first, that's going to be 1 times 4. That's going to give us 4 on bottom. And now I need to do 44 times 5. That's going to be 44 times 5. All right, 5 times 4 is 20, carry the 2. 5 times 4 again is 20, plus that 2, that's going to be 220. All right, so that is 220 there. All right, let's give myself a little bit more space again here. Let's clean some of this other stuff up. Now all we're trying to do is solve for, now we're just trying to reduce this into a number here of 220 divided by 4. Well, again, without using a calculator, I could do long division, or I could sort of realize that 220 is really just 200 plus 20. So 200 over 4 and 20 over 4. Well, I know 20 over 4 is really just 20 divided by 4 is 5. And then 200 divided by 4, well, if 20 divided by 4 is 5, 200 divided by 4 will be 50. So I just add those together, and that gives me 55 there. So again, both ways I can derive the same answer of getting 44 is 80% of 55. All right, so I hope that has helped you there. If it did, drop a comment down below saying, yeah, that was awesome, or no, that was super confusing, and we can try and explain different ways of how to solve this. But again, those are the two main ways that I know of sort of working with percentages and fractions and figuring out the percentages of different numbers.